Well, hello, and welcome to my cellar. My cellar is colder than hell right now. We've been having mid and upper 90s temperatures, heat index higher than that. And if you've ever lived in a one-bedroom ranch or a one-story ranch or a ranch with a basement, well, to keep it 76 or 78 upstairs means you have to be able to store your meat down here over the winter. So that's why you see me wearing sweaters all the time. That, in fact, I'm a tiny bit cold-blooded. All right. A bunch of things to get through tonight. If I yawn a couple of times, it's just because I'm up later than normal. Cheryl and I went and saw a Steely Dan concert tonight, and it was outstanding. And then I came home to do this for you. See what sacrifices I make. Gotta drink some more Mountain Dew to stay awake. All right. This question is actually one I overlooked last week. And I'm sorry I did, because I meant to have an answer for it. So, listen to this carefully. Is adventuring the only way for wizards to advance in power? Well, for one thing, they're magic users. Wizard, I believe, is a specific level of magic user. Pedantics, I know. Semantics, rather. It's pedantic, yes. Is there a better way for wizards to increase their levels without having to crawl through muddy and bloody adventures with warriors, rogues, and clerics? No. And the entitlement that question reeks of makes me think that you're one of those people that wants to play a magic user without having to get your hands dirty. Tough. Role-playing is based on experience. Experience is based on doing things. There used to be a way for, well, there still is, as far as I know, depending upon your DM, there's a way to learn new spells as a magic user. Research, it's called. And it's up to the DM to decide how much it'll cost and what kind of equipment or supplies or, consumables will be needed in the thing. And then there's a time limit to it. Now remember, popular lore has it that wizards live a very, very, very long time. Well, that doesn't fit in too well with the time frames of playing a tabletop role-playing game. So, something's got to give. And where do you suppose wizards go and find new spells, grimoires, codices, etc., and learn those facts they need when researching to learn to do new things that they can't do already? They go out in the adventure. They don't just go down to the friendly Ahab the bookseller, because they need money to do that. And those kind of books are going to be very expensive. So to get money, they got to go out and get their hands dirty. Yes, isn't that a shame? You have to go out there and grub around with the rest of the hoi polloi. You pissy magic user. All right. That was from last week. As a DM for most of my gaming career, I made all dice rolls behind the DM screen and announced the results. Then a few years ago, I noticed a GM who made his rolls out in front of the screen and noticed the level of increased drama I'd added to the table. Started doing that myself. Obviously, there's still some rolls for things like that the players don't necessarily know, like the result of thief skills or hiding or detecting traps, etc., that still happen behind the screen, but monster combat rolls out front seem to really raise the drama level for the players. Where do I fall on this? Yeah, this is a question from a friend. Let me reiterate one more time. The only game that I play nowadays is my Wheel of Blame. And that Wheel of Blame game has actually less die rolling than it might otherwise occur over the same period of time. And part of the blame thing in the name is the fact that I roll out in public. I roll dice, 20-siders. Did the monster hit? Who did the monster hit? If it's a random determination, because that favors the combat style I do. If I rolled a hit and it hits, well, then the players roll their own damage. They roll 2 hit, and if they do hit, they roll the damage they inflict. They roll their own saving throws. In fact, everything I can possibly put on the player to roll, I do, because it's not my fault. It's the Wheel of Blame, and I take none. I can certainly see where the drama level would increase if you had watching that die go around and around like the marble in the roulette wheel, waiting to see how it comes up. Certainly. Hey, it's whatever works for your group. When I'm rolling initiative, I generally break, unless there's only 1 or 2 things that I'm rolling for. If there's 3 or more, I roll a dice for each of them, or I break them down into groups. And the results of a initiative roll, I don't feel I need to roll those out in the table. I just say, okay, we start calling the numbers, and okay, we get to 3. One of my guys has got a 3, and that's okay. If it works for your table, by all means do it. It's all about your table. If my goal was to recreate the atmosphere style of the classic D&D dungeon crawl as the early TSR staff intended, what components would you insist needed to be in place? I'm curious of your opinion. Thank you. A clear table. The only thing ever allowed on the table at TSR or in my table is a writing instrument, your character sheet, and your dice. No books. You can have paper up there to take notes in or whatever, but that's fine. No reference. No looking it up. And that's a hard and fast rule. And I still enforce it. No metagaming. We didn't metagame. We were very strict about that. That's about the only thing, I guess. I can't really think of anything else. We were just all sitting there around the table, doing our thing, waiting to roll our dice. And I don't know, it was cleaner, more spare. Do the characters with low strength that gives -1 inflict any damage with a roll of 1 from a dagger, 1d4 -1? No. If they happen to roll a 1, it's just a scratch. No harm. That's the bummer of being low strength and trying to use weapons that require strength. C'est la vie. Maybe magic users in D&D can cause a wish spell to create a living being. They can certainly summon living beings. Well, summoning a living being from somewhere else and compelling it to obey you or do as you wish is one thing. Creating life is quite another. God knows there have been enough novels out about trying it from Shelley's Frankenstein on. And what is life? Is life a reanimated corpse? Is life something brought about like the Frankenstein monster with rudimentary thought processes? No. My world, no. Magic users don't create life. Where would it end? Well, I want to create a red toucan that has a razor-sharp bill the size of a regular toucan, claws that'll inflict 4 points damage each on its feet, and poisonous feathers. Well, okay, make a one-off and justify it as being something a wizard put together, a demented wizard put together. But creating life where none existed, putting that spark in, nah, that's beyond the reach of mere mortals, in my opinion. Since another D&D movie has been made and is set to release in 2023, I was wondering what your thoughts were on this, and what do you think had been a good approach to making a D&D film? I haven't had any thoughts about it. I don't know that I would ever be happy with a D&D film. Certainly nothing that's come out yet is worth a crap, in my opinion. The only way I can see to possibly do it would be to sit a bunch of people down at the table, like, say, in the first season of Stranger Things, a bunch of kids, and then through some circumstance, the movie shifts. They are now grown-ups, all that Jumanji, where they all become characters in the video game. Okay, that'd be an interesting way to do it. But as to a D&D film, I don't hold out much hope. I don't know, you can't write a movie about a bunch of nerds that sit around writing adventures any more than you can write a movie about a bunch of nerds sitting around a table pretending they're playing adventures. Yeah, that's my opinion. Okay, I'm interested to know your opinion on what I believe has been the shift in fantasy RPGs from somewhat of an emphasis on a pseudo-medieval European feel to a much more fantastic video game-esque tone, and having what I feel is an absolute insane amount of playable races and classes. I think that for me, the options are overwhelming. I certainly agree on the ridiculous number of races and classes. I see no value in 98% of the additional classes. Races, that's a different thing. That's a new monster, whether it's a inimical monster intent on eating your sweet flesh, or a helpful monster who becomes an NPC. I don't like the mixing that some of this is bringing about. I don't believe firearms have any place whatsoever in a medieval or a slightly non-medieval, anything that isn't a post-apocalyptic or an actual role-playing game taking place during a war. I don't think who needs firearms when you got magic, for Christ's sake? Who needs it? I mean, good Lord. Point your finger and obliterate something. It's a whole lot better than any pistol. And no, I'm not going into assault weapons, fighting off wave after wave of goblins and orcs. That would just be unfair to the goblins and orcs. See, the arms race is nothing new. It's been there since the day the first guy picked up a rock and chucked it at somebody else and brained him. And somebody saw that happen. And so the next time that rocks were being chucked, they picked up a blanket and wrapped it around their arm or, whatever, and created the shield. Well, now the shield has negated rocks, so those who wishing to harm somebody else have to come up with something better. Arrows, darts, spears, whatever. It's an arms race. There's nothing in there that factors in firearms. I think part of the influence you're seeing comes from the increased popularity of post-apocalyptic settings. Mutant Crawl Classics being a chief one. There they wield everything all at once. Knives, guns, phasers. And they even have a sense of a spell in that it's a plea to your AI, which translates as deity. I think that's where it's coming from. I don't like it, but hey, I'm just one DM. So if there's thousands of peoples out there just eating this up, get a bigger spoon, go for it. Let's go on, shall we? Okay. Tim, Brian Bloom seemed like a decent guy in that Gary got along with him pretty good until Kevin got involved. What was your relationship with Brian like pre and post Kevin? How exactly did Kevin get his rank at TSR? Did Brian blindly side with his brother, and if so, how do you think things would have gone down if he hadn't? Complex question, complex answer. Brian by himself was an okay guy. I got along with him fine. I don't know how Kevin got his foot in the door. Read John Peterson's books, one of his books about how control was lost by Gary, and he got his foot in there somewhere. He got leveraged in somehow or other because the Bloom's father's money was involved in founding the company. After Kevin got there, Brian got stranger and weirder and less likely to just hang out and want to play games at night in the evening or whatever. I think Kevin was pouring shit in his ear, telling him he had to act more like a boss and less like one of the guys. And I have no idea why Brian was such a pushover when it came to his brother. Any crap Kevin poured in his ears, Brian swallowed as gospel. I don't know. That's a family dynamic that I never was exposed to and really don't care. Had Kevin not come in, oh God, yes, I'd have still been there, without a doubt, because with Kevin came his shrew harridan of a wife, Mary. Things would have been different because I don't know, I wasn't there when the decisions were made, but I have a feeling that Kevin's hand lies heavily in the decision to buy all those cars and the plan to buy a helicopter and all the grandiose crap. And it is true that they bought a needlepoint company just to keep his wife busy, give her something to do. And if it turned a profit, fine. It was under the TSR umbrella. And if it didn't turn a profit, I don't know how they had it wired exactly. It may have been a tax write-off for TSR. But I do know that it was just to keep his bitch wife quiet. Give her something to do and keep her out of everybody's hair. But predicting the future from a point in the past is never very accurate and never easy. Could you give us behind the scenes the creation of the Modron? Nope, wasn't there. That was Monster Manual 2 in '83, and I was long gone, so I have no idea. Yeah, it does seem like a rigid, and who was poking at what? I don't know. That was something out of Forgotten Realms, I think. But I could be wrong on that. what's your experience of going out playing D&D while camping around a fire? Have any? Nope. Did you ever use a Balrog in your Carbondale dates? If so, what happened? No, I never did. Next follow-up, what sort of out there monsters did you provide to your players in Carbondale that you would never bother with again? Why is that? Well, I am of the opinion that I could run a campaign game for years and never have to use anything other than what was in the little brown books. I'm now of the opinion that, oh hell, we fought goblins once before, we don't want to fight them again, let's fight something new. That's bullcrap. I think there's plenty of things in the little brown books. Or, okay, I'll be magnificent, so we'll go to the first edition monster manual. First edition AD&D monster manual. 1, not 2, or whatever else came. I never needed anything more than that. A good DM can find ways to threaten their characters, the characters. Late night, hang on, lubricate. They can kill you bad and easy enough. I mean, I don't even need something that's considered mainly a monster. I could trample a party to death with wild horses. As long as I had a plausible explanation. Regarding weapons and armor, do you prefer a more generalized approach with general categories for certain types, or a more detailed approach? For example, distinguishing between an arming sword, a broadsword, a longsword, bastard sword, falchion. Okay, no. Class them, clump them. It's fun to add an odd one in. Certainly, it's an exotic weapon. It has an intrinsic value, and I could make a case for having to learn how to use it, particularly if it's something well outside your normal circle of expertise, or your normal area, rather, of expertise. Can you please describe a couple of your favorite NPC characters from previous adventures or campaigns? Well, he who was once known as the Druid of the Grove was my character in playtesting the village of Hamlet, and he became Jeru, obviously a favorite. And then, in my very first campaign, there was Kelnor the Blue. Kelnor the Blue was a neutral good wizard who every once in a while would leave a clue or give a gentle nudge to the party or something of that nature to help them get over a hump or out of a rut. Sorry if that disappoints. Okay, time to ask a question. It's about the history of Vecna. What's its origin and what inspired it? Beats me. I don't mean to sound flippant. I have no idea. You'd have to ask Gary. Maybe Rob Kuntz would know. That's very possible. Because they were thick as thieves back then in the Greyhawk thing. There's a YouTube channel that's going through all the Dragon magazines, and they love to start off the walk through each issue with your Dragon rumbles. My question is, you seemed you were very angry in these articles, and was wondering what was the cause. What was the tone of the industry and work face during the time? Yeah, well, I used the Dragon rumbles as an editorial, as an op-ed page. And I frequently addressed things that I thought were harming the hobby or giving us a bad image. I particularly took off and even had an illustration about some Society of Creative Anachronism people that came to one of our cons here in Cincinnati, and well before woke and all this, were putting on a terribly sexist demonstration of Capture the Princess. And of course, she's a cowering, simpering female, and the big guys, the bad guys are going up against the good guys, and it was terrible. I thought at the time, we being role players, do not need to be associated with these people as though we were, I guess is what I'm looking to say. I got no problem with the Ska people going out and making up, great swords coated in foam and wrapped in duct tape and beating the shit out of each other. I got no problem with that whatsoever. If that's what they get their jollies, that's fine. But that's not what we do. And at the time, because remember when those were written, 76, 77, 78, into 79, we were still fighting to create a positive image. We were trying to play down the satanic crap. I believe I wrote another one about, there was a game called Killer. I believe Steve Jackson might have put it out, or he may have put out a more modern set of rules that somebody else did. I'm not blaming Steve. But it was an assassination game, and you went around shooting everybody until only one was left with dart guns. The problem being, at that time, was a couple of college students got severely injured by security people because they were running around, hiding in the bushes, jumping out and shooting at people, walking down the street with what could look to be in the dark with an automatic in their hand. And I just thought it showed a lot of lack of common sense, and certainly a certain blindness to image. I do know of an occasion that I verified where somebody jumped up at somebody on the steps of the library, wherever the hell it was, and startled some dear old lady who was injured. There being people dashing through traffic, trying to avoid being shot. That's just stupid for a game. No game is worth getting hit by a semi-truck. No game. Let's see. They aren't actually Tim's hands. Those aren't actually Tim's hands showing up big in the webcam. They are actually Big Beast's giant hand spells that I cast. That's right. You said nobody less than 100 levels should be able to create life with magic, but couldn't a wish spell do exactly that? No, we talked about that earlier. Now, the thing about wish spells, and I don't know how what got into the book got there, because it's not the way that we used to play them, is that Gary looked for every opportunity to crock a wish. You could write out a 3-page, single-spaced, pica, typewritten wish, thinking you had every base covered. Gary could read through it, and within 20 seconds find a loophole. Did he always? No. But on things that you as a DM don't want, find a loophole. Make them create them and give them a 6-month lifespan. No, there's ways around, as you as a DM can keep your campaign and game being overrun by artificial life. I guess no matter what deity no matter what faith you profess in real life, they all pretty much leave creation to the Supreme Being. Blame him for it, credit him with it, whatever. Being raised a Catholic, being agnostic for 20 years, then giving the Anglican Church, Episcopalian Church, a shot for about 10. I'm comfortably non-practicing anything again. But I still get a little hinky about using really not fooling around godlike powers. So you either believe that there's a supreme being that created the ball rolling, or you believe in evolution. Well, evolution took millions of years. Even as long-lived as they are, you're not going to be able to do that kind of thing. I got a cup of pond water, and create a frog out of it in less than probably 800 lifetimes, or 8,000, 80,000. I don't know how long did it take frogs to evolve. I'm playing D&D 5e right now, and is working on the crafting rules. Crafting. Oh, okay. How do I craft magical items and potions? Well, I don't. In that, if I decide there's a need, I make one. If I'm going to run an adventure, and part of the threat is not being touched by any of a certain group of people or monsters or whatever, or contracting a deadly disease, well then of course I'm going to make up a cure. And if you do get touched and you only have, there's got to be a way to counteract the disease. So I'm going to make up something like that. Magical items. Well, if I want a thing that does some things that I'd like to see done, I make it up. I'm not really sure what differences or limitations 5e would put on doing that kind of thing. We didn't have crafting. I'm not 100% sure what all the word crafting entails, and I really didn't want to bother and look it up either, because I don't play 5e. But if I get the gist of your question, you make an item to suit your need. You create the general gist of your campaign, the overarching elements of your campaign. And you get your puzzle all together, and you find you got one, you're missing a piece, wasn't in the box, you swear. Well, that's where you plug your magic in. I know, extended metaphors are hard late at night. Apologize. Do honesty on die rolls makes the game more enjoyable? Certainly does for me. The people that cheat apparently don't share that value. But then again, as I always say when I sit down at the beginning of a new Wheel of Blame game, is that, as I explained, you're going to roll all your own dice. I'm not even going to keep track of how many hit points each guy has. For one thing, you got too many potions, and the antidotes and all that I'd be constantly changing numbers. I don't care. You keep your own. And I've never seen a case where I was certain that somebody had died that they didn't say, oh, that's it, I'm dead. Maybe it's because there's a universal antidote on the table, literally, that makes the death impermanent. Maybe it's also because it's not a character they have heavily invested emotions in. Okay, another question on rolling. The OSR really encourages referees to roll in the open and let the dice fall where they may. Well, I question some of the characterizations here. That has been a topic in OSR chats and what have you. But If you prefer the mystery of rolling behind the screen whenever possible, do it. If you haven't gotten your players to trust you by then, you may never anyway. Breezing right along, because we have so many things to touch on tonight. You can hide some rolls. If you want to roll in the open, that's fine. I would do the same that I do now, and they roll on something they're not sure of what the armor class is, and they roll. And when they roll their Thaco and still don't hit, well, then they know they're in deep kimchi, and that this is a bad monster. Bad. So, there is that. Okay. Let's see. First off, I don't do book reviews as such. I will occasionally do book plugs, as you've noticed. And I'm going to plug this one. It's called Calamity. It's by Pamela Mohan. I'm going to plug it for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a good read. It's about Martha Jane Cannery, otherwise known as Calamity Jane. It's a good read. Very good read. Number two, Pamela Mohan is the wife of Kim Mohan, who I used to work with at Dragon Magazine all those years ago, and who went on to Hasbro with Dragon. And so she's one of us. And the third reason is because the book design and the interior stuff, because there's a lot of silhouetting done inside, which is an old school, old style type of publishing, and the typefaces are all appropriate to the time period. The layout and design was all done by Darlene the artist, also one of ours. More than, a charter member of one of ours. It's a really good book. It's a really good read. And I always encourage people to support people in our industry and support us. This isn't a game, but it's still worth it. You can find it at it's published by Calamity Press in Seattle, Washington. Good book. Nice ladies that put it out. One nice lady wrote it, and another nice lady put it all together in a very attractive package. Check it out. And I found it really fun to read because, having been a big fan of the Deadwood series on TV, I had a face to put on every name from thither. Okay. I have a question, an open question. What's up with metal dice? There are some beautifully crafted and made metal dice out there. Don't get me wrong. Works of art in some cases. Some are solid, some are pierced, some are very complex. Well, one question pops to mind is, oh God, that's too pretty to roll. Another question pops to mind, because some of these metal dice are, they could be considered a lethal weapon. They're so heavy. Put 3 of them in a sock and you can break somebody's skull. What surface do you roll these sharp-pointed, heavy metal dice on? Because, believe me, after 10 or 12 rolls across your dining room table, unless it's made of formica, you're going to have little tiny pits all over it where these things bounce and roll. Which begs the question, how much can you roll them and bounce them before you start to blur and mar the lovely artwork that many of them possess? I don't understand it. I'm not making the people that make them, because I'm not a dice collector, as many people in the business are. I have accumulated an awful lot of dice, but I've not set out to do that. In fact, I don't go to a con unless, without seeing Oh, beauties, pretty, pretty. And I tell myself, no, no, no. And I don't buy them because they're more dice, and I don't need more dice. Buying more figures when you haven't painted the ones you got, that's a whole different story. But I just don't understand. What's with the metal dice? You'd have to roll in a special dice tray, or you'd have to have a piece of fabric or felt, heavy fabric or felt, to lay down on a wooden table. All right. Short story here, short intro to this story. My wife's an avid mahjong player and plays twice a week. And one of the groups, they play for money. I say money. The most you can possibly lose is $10. Even if you lost your entire stake, they don't make you quit playing. And they play by the Mahjong League rules, and so hands might cost 50 cents to the losers or $1.50 to but it's all small stakes. And she's quite good at it, and she almost always, I'd say 7 weeks out of 8, comes home on a positive. And she just takes a hand of change and dumps it in this bag she had in the drawer. Like a clutch purse-like bag. And it got so heavy it took 2 hands to lift it out. So I got out my coin sorter and I sorted. Now here's the point of this story. In nickels, dimes, and quarters, what could be probably considered common sizes, I use a currency very much like the American one, 100 coppers to a gold piece. 100 coppers to a silver, 10 silvers to a gold. And it's just easy arithmetic for me, so that's the way I do it. So I counted out. She had, there was 14 rolls of quarters, 2 rolls of dimes, 2 rolls of nickels, $158 in silver. You know how much that $158 in silver weighed? 6.8 pounds. And believe me, 6.8 pounds compressed into an area as small as that clutch purse full of all those coins is damn densely heavy. It's not something you just sling in your side pocket. Because if you do, your pocket's going to drag you to the ground eventually, or if you put it on your belt, it's going to pull your belt down, along with your trues, if that's the case. So in terms of encumbrance, remember that gold is denser than silver, therefore heavier. So if you took those 14 rolls of quarters and 2 rolls of dimes and 2 rolls of nickels and converted them to gold pieces of similar size but of differing values, then it would be even heavier. So now, you're off and you find the lost treasure of the toenail bandits. There it is. A chest, a foot square, 3/4 full of gold pieces and bits and hacked gold, and a 2-foot square chest filled with silver and hacked silver. Well, I got news for you. That 2-foot chest is going to have to weigh a ton. And encumbrance is best understood by envisioning yourself running away from somebody that's trying to point you with pointy things. And you're carrying all that. Just a random thought. Okay, last item. We finally figured out what we're going to do with Patreon, or however you pronounce it. $3, $6, and $9. $3 is, hey, I believe in what you're doing, thanks a lot. $6 is you get a thank you online, on air, and in the tagline at the end. And $9 is going to get those people 2 bonuses. I have access to a commercial Zoom account, so I can have up to 200 people in a conversation at one time. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to do 2 special things for the $9 level people. Number 1, they get a once a month, Curmudgeon Unplugged, in which I'll feel free to be much freer and less circumspect. It won't be fancy editing with a song or anything, and only those people on the list will get sent the code that will enable them to see that video. Second thing I'm going to do, and this involves a Zoom thing, so I think I'm going to we'll start at 60 minutes and see how it goes. 60-minute Q&A once a month, again for those $9 level subscribers. And we'll see how that works out, but I think that could be a lot of fun, because I've done a couple of live streams with Jim here, and they went well, and I had a good time doing them. At least I think they went well. So anyway, that's where we're at now. We're coming into the heat of the summer. Stay indoors, stay hydrated. If you got to go outdoors, stay doubly hydrated. And, gaming is a very cool pastime when you're playing inside the AC. So on that note, Dodata Gopi.
Curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, a curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, a curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Curmudgeon.